Both my younger sister and I were senior palace maids in Consort One's palace. In our past life, when Consort One was demoted, she could only bring one personal maid with her to the Cold Palace. She made my sister and me choose. One would follow her to the Cold Palace, while the other would serve Consort One, who had been on good terms with her in the past. In our past life, my sister chose to follow Consort One. Little did we know that Consort One was reckless and offended other consorts in the harem, ultimately being framed and killed. Meanwhile, Consort One eventually made a comeback, not only leaving the Cold Palace but also rising to become the Empress. My sister envied my good fortune and came to me in tears, only to turn around and push me into a deep well. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn to the moment when Consort One was about to be sent to the Cold Palace. This time, my sister knelt on the ground, clinging to Consort One's leg. "Your Highness, this humble servant is willing to follow you to the Cold Palace." Consort One was pleased with her loyalty and turned to ask me, "And you, would you be willing to serve by Concubine Huan's side?" I lowered my gaze to conceal my joy, answering without hesitation, "I'm willing." Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. Consort One frowned. Having expected me to compete fiercely with my sister for the chance to accompany her to the Cold Palace, under her displeased and puzzled stare, I dug my fingernails into my palms and stubbornly maintained my silence. Concubine Huan passed me by and went to help my sister up. "You're still young, how could you possibly serve your mistress alone? Why not come with me instead, and let your sister serve in the Cold Palace?" I stood there woodenly, a pang of bitterness and uncertainty rising in my heart. In truth, my sister and I were only a year apart in age. She was lively and sweet-tongued, not only more favored by Consort One than I was, but even Concubine Huan treated her with special regard, facing Huan Pin's kindness. The younger sister said with resolute determination, "This servant cannot bear to part with my mistress. If my mistress must suffer in the Cold Palace, I truly cannot bear to remain comfortably alone." Her words earned even more admiration and sympathy from everyone present. A rare touch of emotion appeared on Consort One's usually cold face. "You are truly good, worthy of the care I've shown you all this time. And what about you, Yuju? Have you nothing to say?" She turned to me, the smile fading from her face. Do I even need to say it? In my past life, I said I would follow her into the Cold Palace, but she claimed my expression wasn't sincere enough, that my words didn't match my heart. Calling me hypocritical and pretentious, "This time," I said, "this servant will follow whatever arrangements the two noble consorts make." "You," just as Consort One was looking utterly disappointed and heartbroken, the eunuch beside her glanced at the sky and announced, "The hour has come. Consort One, please proceed." Consort One had no choice but to set off with my younger sister in tow. The moment she turned to enter the Cold Palace, my sister glanced back at me with a triumphant smile. As if riches and honor were already within her grasp, little did she know, I too breathed a sigh of relief, for I knew better than anyone how terrifying life in the Cold Palace truly was. In this palace, no one treats the people in the Cold Palace as human beings. The hardest to endure is winter, without charcoal for warmth or padded clothes. Every year women freeze to death and are wrapped in straw mats before being thrown out. In my past life, I was utterly loyal to Consort One. Fearing she would suffer from the cold, I endured the disgust of submitting myself to an old eunuch in exchange for a bit of charcoal. Yet Consort One herself still saw herself as that lofty, untouchable consort, her delicate fingers never touching a drop of cold water. She frowned and pursed her lips. "Yuju, I'm so cold, couldn't you ask for more charcoal?" She shook her head and sighed. "Yuju, if you're going to be someone's dog, at least demand more than these scraps. When have I ever suffered such humiliation? It's all your fault." Shivering from cold, hunger, and pain, I pleaded with her, "My lady, could this servant also sit by the brazier for a while?" She looked at me with utter disgust. "After what you did with that old eunuch, your body is filthy. Don't even think about entering my room." Consort One emerged from the Cold Palace still radiant and flawless, while my own body had long been rotting from within. On the way back with Consort One, my steps carried a newfound lightness. Consort One glanced at me sideways. "So you're Yuju, since you insist on following me, you'll serve as a night watch and fire tender in the Palace of Eternal Joy from now on." My body stiffened slightly. Unlike my previous life where my sister followed Lady Huan and continued her comfortable duties as a first-rank palace maid, this time Lady Huan humiliated me by assigning me the menial tasks of a third-rank maid. But that wasn't all. Lady Huan then publicly reprimanded me. "Remember, The Palace of Eternal Joy is nothing like the autumn evening pavilion. Stop scheming with those shameful little tricks of yours. To say I wasn't humiliated and wronged would be a lie, but I bit back my tongue and refrained from defending myself, because explanations would be useless. The maids beside Consort Huan all looked over with disdain, kowtow, and give thanks. Among them were those who had once warmly called me Sister Yuju. It's human nature to fawn on those above and trample those below. I knelt respectfully and kowtowed. Thank you, Consort Huan. My wooden dullness seemed to disappoint Consort Huan, who lost interest in further admonishment. With a cold snort, she continued walking forward. I followed her into the Palace of Eternal Joy. Banners fluttered above the Shanglin Park, while drums and bells resounded from Changla Palace. The Palace of Eternal Joy was far more magnificent and imposing than the autumn twilight pavilion where Consort Huan had previously resided. There were many palace maids inside, coming and going in an orderly manner. The main hall of Changle Palace was occupied by the current imperial consort, while Consort Huan resided in the side hall. I arrived here, barely able to harbor any hope for the future. When, whether by Consort Huan's orders or not, I was immediately ostracized by the people in the side hall. At night, I was assigned to keep watch, but when my shift was over, no one came to relieve me. Since childhood, I was sent into the depths of the palace, well aware of its rules and the underhanded tactics practiced within, knowing I couldn't afford a single misstep at this moment, nor leave any evidence behind. I gritted my teeth and continued my duties. When dawn finally came and I could return, I discovered the meal that should have been mine had been thrown into the slop bucket. In my past life, I'd eaten plenty of spoiled leftovers in the cold palace. In this life, I could still fish out a stained bun from the filth and shove it into my mouth. I silently packed up to rest, only to be forcibly awakened again. Whoever fears death and clings to life should be ashamed to sleep. Get to the kitchen and start the fire and wash the vegetables. Pa. A traitor who sells out their master for glory. For several days in a row, they deliberately kept me from sleeping. Physical exhaustion did not crush me. Compared to the cold palace, this hardship was nothing. Better not let me grasp even a sliver of hope, just one thread. I silently gazed at the sky. I gritted my teeth and endured, but my body gradually reached its limit. While tending the fire in the small kitchen, I accidentally dozed off and was caught by the head kitchen matron. I resigned myself to the expectation of being punished, perhaps made to kneel or even slapped across the face. To my surprise, the matron merely scolded me a little, without resorting to severe measures. What's that look on your face? Do you think this old woman would strike you over such a trifle, even in Changledian? We abide by the law, she said. I stood stunned, feeling as though I had narrowly escaped disaster in that moment. In the darkness, as long as others didn't treat me harshly, I could already feel grateful. Though I never spoke of it, my hands and feet grew more diligent to repay these rare acts of kindness. I rushed to do extra chores in the kitchen each time, hoping to ease the old maidservant's burden. The old maidservant had a stern face but a warm heart. She noticed my efforts and, though she never mentioned it, gradually treated me with increasing gentleness. The day I came back from duty and was about to scoop from the slop bucket again, she brought out a warm meal she had saved for me. Later, whenever I was exhausted, she would wave her hand and let me go to the back for a nap, and so, life loosened its grip just a little, becoming slightly more bearable. I was deeply grateful to this nun, though slow-witted by nature. I always remember every kindness shown to me and seek opportunities to repay it. After receiving my meager monthly allowance, I exchanged it for some fresh ingredient scraps. In the small kitchen, I prepared a plate of my own creation, 7 ingenuity pastries, for the old nanny. The nanny ate them with endless praise, opening her heart to me as well. Gradually, I gained my first cross-generational friendship across both lifetimes. Later, I seized the opportunity to make stuffed meat, milk cakes, and tripe soup again. The old nanny was utterly amazed. In the main hall of Changla Palace, Consort Huan was overwhelmed with flattered surprise. She never expected the usually haughty and domineering noble consort to invite her for tea. It's rare to see the noble consort in such high spirits, truly a blessing for us concubines. Though I wonder, which of my maids has been fortunate enough to catch your highness's eye? Whoever could earn face before the noble consort would surely receive generous rewards upon returning. The noble consort glanced at her matron, who stepped forward to reply. It's Miss Yuju, her culinary skills are exceptional. Many people don't know that this rather inconspicuous cooking nanny in the kitchen was actually one of the trusted aides the noble consort brought from her maiden home. The noble consort spoke lazily. I just learned it was someone from your quarters serving here. You've hidden this quite well." Hearing my name, Consort Juan's eyes momentarily showed confusion, followed by surprise and disbelief. I was called forward to pay respects to Her Highness the Noble Consort. The palace maid beside the noble consort came over and placed a bag of silver in my hand, saying it was Her Highness's reward. Though the noble consort was ruthless and domineering, having even beaten and killed other concubines, she was never stingy with rewards for servants. Consort Juan regained her composure, her expression complicated, and muttered softly, "You actually have such skills. I've underestimated you." In her eyes, I was originally mediocre, only able to serve closely by Consort Juan's side thanks to my younger sister's influence. Little did they know that when I was at the Autumn Twilight Pavilion, I rose to become a first-rank palace maid through real capability, not just in name. Knowing I was plain-looking and clumsy with words, I honed exceptional culinary skills and mastered accounting. Now not only was I rewarded, but even Consort Juan received a gem-encrusted crabapple branch hairpin from the noble consort. The other two concubines in the side chambers couldn't hide their envy. "What fortunate luck you have, sister, with such capable people under you. This Miss Yuju looks like a steady and capable one. How come I haven't seen her around before?" Concubine Juan glanced at me and coughed awkwardly. She was entrusted to me by Sister Juan and only arrived a few days ago. Before I could make proper arrangements, I sent her to help in the kitchen. After speaking, she immediately looked to see the noble consort's reaction. Fortunately, the noble consort merely gave her a sidelong glance and didn't scold her on the spot for daring to mention the disgraced consort. The two concubines were sharp-eyed and immediately chimed in. "Oh my, little sister is truly so devoted and righteous." Flattered by such praise, Concubine Juan's smile grew even more smug. Concubine Juan wasn't particularly bright. In fact, she was reckless and prone to offending others. "You're absolutely right, elder sisters. In life, one simply can't be too selfish." Yet these same two concubines had avoided even showing their faces the moment they heard about Concubine Juan's misfortune. Now that Consort Juan had verbally attacked me, I couldn't help but grit my teeth in secret. Returning to the side hall, Consort Juan gave me some rewards in front of all the palace maids to save face. Before leaving, she dropped one final remark: "No need to keep night watch anymore. Just focus on doing your kitchen duties properly. Your rank will be set as second class." Yes. I received my new assignment and strode back with a bundle of fresh palace-made uniforms in my arms. Tears streamed down my face as I faced the increasingly bitter cold wind. When I returned to the maid's quarters, I found the chamber pot that had been beside my sleeping mat had been moved elsewhere by someone. Several third-rank maids returned laughing with charcoal braziers, but fell silent the moment they saw me. I knew them. They had joined in ostracizing me before. With awkward expressions, they pushed the brazier closer to my bedding. I smiled faintly and paid them no mind. Life seemed to revive like an old tree sprouting new buds, and soon enough, I saw my sister again. After just a few days apart, she had visibly lost weight, shivering in her thin clothes. Her once plump and fair face now bore several scratch marks, leaving her in a pitiful state. It turned out she had fought with other palace maids in the cold palace for food, not only failing to get any but also getting her face scratched. She hadn't had a proper meal in several days. She glared at me with resentment. "How did you get food in your past life?" "By stealing," I said. At first, I really relied on snatching from others, but what I managed to take was pitifully little. Later, I met a former imperial concubine inside. She managed to get some rice and flour by forming a paired meal relationship with a eunuch, and she had even stored away some winter cabbage for herself. I often went to help, but she was very suspicious. Only after tasting my cooking a few times did she silently allow me to come. When she was full, she would give me some leftovers, which I took back to share with Juan Fei. "Is grabbing the only way? You're not lying to me, are you?" My younger sister slumped in despair. She had always been clever at currying favor, relying on her silver tongue to win her master's affection. What real ability or strength did she truly possess? "If you try to fight, you'll only get beaten up." My sister gritted her teeth, her eyes turning pitiful. "Sister, can you help me? I'm your only sister, after all." I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. In my past life, I too had been starving and had no choice but to beg her for help. "But what about her, my dear sister? It was you who insisted on entering the cold palace back then. Having gained a reputation for loyalty, shouldn't you endure some suffering? After all, you can't have all the benefits. Don't come out anymore. Your sister's life is also precious. Don't drag me down with you." Right in front of me, she threw the unfinished pastries into the slop bucket. She said, "If you're really hungry, just pick it up and eat it." At that moment, I was utterly shocked and despairing. Now, I pulled out a flaky pastry from my chest pocket and glanced at the slop bucket beside me. My younger sister widened her eyes in disbelief, shaking her head. No, you can't humiliate me like this. She could insult me all she wanted, but couldn't take it when the tables were turned. I snorted coldly, putting the pastry into my mouth and eating it bite by bite. I wasn't as shameless as her. I cherished every morsel of food. She collapsed to the ground, whimpering and crying, but I won't show her the slightest mercy anymore. I just never expected that Consort Juan would actually agree to see her. In my past life, when I couldn't endure the old eunuch's torment anymore, I too had begged desperately to see Consort Juan, but she refused to meet me. My younger sister was overjoyed, throwing herself at Consort Juan's feet as she tearfully poured out her grievances. Concubine Juan sighed in sympathy. You've suffered greatly. This servant risked death to come here. I beg your ladyship to save our mistress. This, Concubine Juan hesitated. Aiding someone from the cold palace privately would be a grave offense. I know this puts your highness in a difficult position, so this servant has thought of a solution that satisfies both sides. My sister abruptly shed her earlier gentleness, her eyes darting about before suddenly landing on me, her lips curling into a vicious smile. A bad feeling rose in my heart. Why not have elder sister take on the task of delivering charcoal and provisions to us daily? Her lips parted as she spoke. Even if we're caught, elder sister just needs to say you couldn't bear to see your younger sister suffer and beg earnestly for mercy. Surely nothing will come of it. Concubine Juan nodded in agreement upon hearing this. Nothing will come of it. How could she shamelessly claim nothing would happen? If caught, even if I kowtowed until my forehead bled, I wouldn't escape punishment. I clenched my fists, trembling with such rage I nearly lost my balance. Yuju, don't even think of shirking responsibility. She's your own sister, and Consort Juan was your former mistress. You can't just stand by and watch them die. My sister deliberately walked past me and said, then I'll be counting on you from now on, elder sister. After my sister left that day, Consort Juan immediately sent someone to urge me to go to the cold palace. Fine, I'll deliver the meal. I just hope you'll live long enough to eat it. I clutched the bundle tightly as I arrived at the spot my sister had designated. The place was desolate, with a dog hole beneath the wall. She had instructed me to push the food and clothing through this hole, promising she would retrieve them when the opportunity arose. No doubt this very dog hole was her secret passage for escaping the cold palace. I moved stones to block the cave entrance, then I returned to the main gate of the cold palace. With a creaking sound, the palace gates opened, and two eunuchs emerged. My eyes immediately locked onto the hunched old eunuch at the back. Memories of that devil from my past life flooded my mind, making my body tremble uncontrollably. I held back my emotions with great effort and stepped forward. The eunuch in charge ahead shrilled his voice in questioning. Which palace do you belong to? Don't you know the cold palace is forbidden ground that no one may enter at will? The old eunuch behind me sized me up with his murky eyes. A wave of nausea surged within me as I quickly replied, I'm the elder sister of a girl named Yulon inside, bringing her some food and clothes. I beg your leniency, honorable eunuch. The eunuch in charge snorted coldly and rubbed two fingers together, his meaning unmistakable. In the rules of the cold palace, trying to deliver anything without silver for bribes is pure fantasy. I pretended not to understand and simply handed over the bundle. The eunuch spat out. What kind of brainless fool is this? I'm back. Concubine Juan, seeing my obedience and diligence, nodded in satisfaction and instructed me to return the next day. Saying she couldn't bear to see her dear sister Consort Juan suffer, I replied, as you command. The next day when I went again, only one person came out, that old eunuch. The old eunuch looked me up and down. Are you really Yulon's elder sister? Suppressing my disgust, I said yes. He thought for a moment, then smiled lewdly and terrifyingly. Hand the thing over to this humble servant. While I was working in the kitchen, I was summoned by Consort Juan, a disheveled figure, looking like a madwoman, lunged at me. My sister raised her hand and swung it viciously toward my face. I dodged to avoid her slap. She flailed her arms and screamed, You wretch! You wretch! Consort Juan slammed the table and shouted from her seat, Yuju, do you admit your guilt? I knelt down. This servant did not know. I beg your ladyship to calm your anger. Consort Juan gasped heavily. When you went to deliver items to the cold palace, why did you give them to that eunuch? Wasn't it agreed that you would secretly place them in the hole? I lowered my head. This servant is foolish. The dog hole was blocked by someone unknown, and the main gate of the cold palace was tightly shut, making it impossible to enter. I could only give them to the supervising eunuch for delivery. Consort Huan nearly choked on her breath. Fool, you vile wretch. You knew perfectly well that handing it over to those damned eunuchs meant we'd never get it back, and that disgusting old bastard. The old eunuch took the bundle and went straight for her, pinning her to the ground. Yulon resisted, but her clothes were torn, and she was slapped hard several times by the eunuch. Too afraid to stand up to the old eunuch, she poured all her resentment onto me instead. I watched her in silence, like observing a ridiculous clown. Fine. I get it now, you did this on purpose. In my past life, when I was tortured by that old eunuch, word of it had reached her ears. Her reaction was to shame me, deliberately going to the gates of the cold palace to scream that I was a shameless slut. Now, in this life, it's her turn to taste that so-called shamelessness. She still wanted to come at me, but I wasn't about to indulge her anymore. I sprang forward in an instant. If you want people to notice you, go ahead and make a scene. Have you even stopped to think what the consequences would be for sneaking out of the cold palace? I had never seen my sister so stern before. She froze for a moment, and when she met my gaze filled with utter disgust, she instinctively took a step back. Consort Huan also paused in surprise before frowning with displeasure. Yuju, you're quite the tyrant. Have you completely forgotten our sisterly bond? Go kneel outside and reflect on your actions. My sister snorted coldly, exhaling as if relieved, and said sarcastically, Sister, you'd better hurry up and go. Perhaps I should continue to endure and obediently go out to kneel, but facing my younger sister's triumphant expression, I stood there rigidly, unable to move an inch. I said, The noble consort wishes to have chichiao cheese pudding. This servant dares not delay. What? Consort Huan frowned. I repeated myself. Consort Huan seemed absolutely furious, pointing her finger at me. Fine, just fine, Jade Bamboo. So you've grown wings now, is that it? I truly regret bringing you back, nothing but a thankless wretch. I used the imperial consort as an excuse to avoid punishment, but I knew Consort Huan wouldn't let this go. Unwilling to sit idly by, I told the matron about my current predicament. Perhaps I could have exploited the matron's kindness toward me more subtly, but I also knew that honesty was the safest and wisest course. Sure enough, after hearing me out, the matron silently studied me for a moment before sighing and saying she'd help me think of a solution. That very day, someone came from the main hall. As the year draws to a close, Her Highness the Noble Consort has ordered an inventory of the storerooms. I've heard that Miss Yuju is skilled in accounting. Why not have her serve in the main hall? Consort Huan shot me a fierce glare, gripping her teacup tightly. After a long pause, she gritted her teeth and spoke. We are deeply grateful for Her Highness the Noble Consort's kindness, but as for this Maid Yuju, she comes from the Autumn Twilight Pavilion and was once a trusted aide of the late Consort Huan. I'm afraid this concubine cannot make the decision for her. Seeing the palace maid from the main hall looking displeased, Consort Huan cheerfully suggested, why not go ask His Majesty's opinion first? That won't be necessary. This servant takes her leave. No one expected Consort Huan to dare refuse the noble consort. Even she herself patted her chest in lingering fear, asking her attendant, do you think her ladyship the noble consort will be angry? It shouldn't be that serious. She's just a little palace maid, not worth the noble consort's anger. That's good. That's good. I stood there, feeling nothing but overwhelming irony. Consort Huan looked at me. Don't blame me, blame yourself. Who made you less likable than your sister? Suddenly, I couldn't bear to look at Concubine Huan's face any longer. I turned and walked out. As the year drew to a close, heavy snow began to fall. Early in the morning, I spotted a furtive figure slipping into Concubine Huan's chamber. It was my sister again, this time clearly trying to avoid me. Before long, the chief maid from Consort Huan's quarters came to the kitchen to summon me. Yuju, Consort Huan requests your presence. She has orders for you. A sense of foreboding rose in my chest, making my voice hoarse. Please ask her ladyship to wait a moment. I'll come after changing my clothes. I deliberately slowed my movements, just as the palace maid sharing my bunk leaned close to whisper in my ear. Don't go, they mean you harm. Turns out life in the cold palace had become increasingly unbearable, and my younger sister had devised a way to obtain charcoal by having me take her place serving the old eunuch. Your sister said you two have similar builds. That old eunuch's eyesight is failing, he'd never notice in the darkness. Consort Huan has agreed and said she's willing to compensate you. Once it's done, she'll make you a senior palace maid and even ask His Majesty to arrange a companion marriage for you with that old eunuch. I knew they meant no good, but hearing the maid's words still made my whole body tremble. My stomach churned violently, and I nearly vomited as I abruptly stood up. Just then, footsteps approached. Someone outside urged, Are you done yet? Now, I have no choice but to go all out. I rushed out, shoved the palace maid aside, and sprinted toward the palace of gathered elegance, because I remembered the matron saying that new imperial consorts had arrived at the palace today, and the noble consort had gone there to give instructions. I dashed toward the palace of gathered elegance, even if I knew that the imperial consort would later be implicated by her father and brother, stripped of her title, and ultimately die by crashing against a pillar in bitter resentment. I still had to seize the only lifeline before me. At the gate of the palace of gathered elegance, the imperial consort was asserting her authority, condemning a newly selected court lady who had overstepped her bounds with a single word. The court lady's wails left everyone else as silent as cicadas in winter. The imperial consort's gaze swept over me, and I shivered. She scoffed impatiently. "Why aren't you staying properly in Changal Palace? What brings you to this filthy place?" Though her words were clearly a reprimand, I suddenly found myself no longer afraid. I walked up to her, knelt down, and bowed deeply. "I beg for your highness's mercy." She remained silent, fiddling with her gem-encrusted armor, before finally snorting and raising her hand to be helped onto the palanquin. The matron pulled me up, unable to conceal her delight. "Hurry up and follow." I became a palace maid in the main hall, spending mornings inventorying silver and rewards in the treasury, and afternoons making pastries with the matron. This time, no one informed Consort Juan. Concubine Juan hesitated several times, but ultimately intimidated by the noble consort's majesty, didn't dare utter a single word. After becoming a palace maid in the main hall, I gradually gained more friends. Someone brought me news of my younger sister in the cold palace. My sister had become the plaything of an old eunuch, and every night inhuman sounds could be heard coming from the cold palace. There was also Consort Juan's. It was said that the younger sister obtained food from the old eunuch but never brought any back for her mistress. The charcoal braziers were all placed by her own bedside. At first, Consort Juan maintained her dignity, only hinting that the younger sister was bullying her mistress and overstepping her bounds. Later, driven by unbearable hunger, she actually began fighting others for food, only to be pushed to the ground and break her leg. She pleaded with the overseer of the cold palace to let her see the emperor, saying that if His Majesty saw her in such a state, he would surely pity her and release her. The overseer actually believed her words, but unexpectedly received a harsh scolding from the emperor. Upon returning, the overseer slapped Consort Juan twice across the face. Shivering from cold and hunger, Consort Juan curled up on the hard bed plank, and for some reason, suddenly thought of me again. She once again sent someone to deliver a message, saying she missed me and wanted me to visit her. My sister sneaked out again and said to me fiercely, "You're not allowed to go, don't bother with that woman." She cursed Consort Juan for being inhuman. It was Consort Juan who personally sent me to that old eunuch's bed. She's kind-faced but cruel-hearted, a hypocrite through and through. I hate her to death. Of course I wouldn't go see Consort Juan. I'd already seen through what kind of person Consort Juan was in my past life, outwardly pure and flawless, constantly preaching about kindness and Buddhist compassion. Who would have guessed she was actually the most selfish and heartless of all? My younger sister pleaded desperately. "Elder sister, please help me. I'd rather die than return to the cold palace. In my past life, I was blinded by evil and shouldn't have harmed you. I regret it now, truly regret it. Please help me." I looked down at her. "If you were me, would you forgive your own murderer? Elder sister is truly heartless. Have you completely abandoned our sisterly bond?" she shouted after me. My figure resolutely disappeared at the road's end, but she clung to me like a stubborn plaster. And when begging didn't work, she roped in Consort Juan to corner me together. Yet in front of Consort Juan, my sister never mentioned her falling out with Consort Juan, still playing the loyal servant by constantly addressing her as mistress. "Yuju, wasn't it I who brought you into the Palace of Eternal Joy back then? Surely you remember this kindness." Consort Juan struck first with her opening move. "Helpless," I replied. "This servant Yuju dares not forget your ladyship's grace." Concubine Juan sighed in relief. "That's good then. Since it's so, help Juan Fei and your sister as repayment for my kindness." Seeing my silence, she lowered her voice further. "Go plead with noble consort. If she intercedes with His Majesty, wouldn't Juan Fei easily leave the cold palace?" I was both shocked and speechless. "You jest, Concubine Juan." Juan Fei offended the emperor's dignity and was banished to the cold palace. How could mere pleas pardon such a transgression? Concubine Juan coughed a few times and fell silent. "Sister, you can definitely do it. I heard the noble consort favors you greatly, even entrusting you with managing the storeroom." The younger sister's eyes darted around. even if we don't ask the noble consort for help, you could just bring out a few items she uses from the storeroom. When those people in the cold palace see the noble consort's belongings, they wouldn't dare bully me, or Consort One anymore. That's not a bad idea at all. Consort One's eyes lit up. Yuju, you're not as clever as your younger sister. Listening to their back and forth, by the end I was practically laughing in exasperation. Are you all dreaming? I forgot my status in anger and cursed directly. How dare you? Consort One had never been pointed at and scolded by a mere palace maid before. Yuju has offended her superiors. Slap her mouth for me. Let me see who dares. A cold, haughty voice came from outside. The imperial consort strode over with support from her attendants. She stepped forward and *smack* landed a resounding slap across Concubine Huan's face. Did I just hear someone say they wanted to steal from this palace? The consort smiled coldly. Spare me, your highness, Concubine Huan pleaded. Consort Huan trembled all over, and the room instantly fell to its knees in prostration. The noble consort walked up to her sister, who had collapsed on the floor, and lifted her chin with the tip of her shoe. She took a glance. Little vixen, just like your pretentious mistress, she said with a vicious expression. Slap this wretch's mouth for me. Don't beat her to death, just half dead before sending her back. If this wretch dares to step even half a foot out of the cold palace again, sever her tendons. The noble consort then pointed at Concubine Huan, repeatedly associating with that wretch from the cold palace. Are you trying to drag me down with you? Get out. Your stupidity is beyond saving. Don't taint the feng shui of my palace of eternal joy. She turned to me with a cold snort. Useless thing. Only when pushed to this point do you come to me. Are you mute? Your stipend is cut for 6 months. I curved my lips slightly and knelt to express gratitude. The matron whispered in my ear, don't worry. The noble consort gives generous rewards at year's end. Those meager allowances are nothing. Concubine Huan was rolled up in her bedding and driven out of Changle Palace, her face blank with confusion, looking as bereft as if mourning her parents. My younger sister was beaten until her face was covered in blood, her wails heart-rending and piercing. The imperial concubine made me watch the punishment from the side, saying it would toughen up my rabbit-like cowardice, before fainting. My younger sister glared at me fiercely. Don't celebrate for too long. The imperial concubine won't last forever. No one can stop that. She spat out the teeth that had been knocked loose, her eyes burning with madness. Of course I knew what she was talking about, but after I sought refuge with the noble consort, I told her everything I knew from my past life. I told the noble consort that her father, the Duke of Zhanghua, and her brother, the General of Fuyuan, would be falsely accused of treason and colluding with the enemy, and the one who would frame them was none other than the general's own deputy. This deputy general was nominally Wan Fei's sworn brother, but in truth, he was her lover. He wanted to secure a future for Wan Fei, who was languishing in the cold palace. When the noble consort heard my words, she was initially skeptical, but she still had her brother investigate that deputy general. The investigation revealed that everything I said was true. Because of my words, the Duke's mansion was spared from a great disaster. Not long after, the General of Fuyuan achieved a great victory over the Tartars and returned to the capital in triumph. At the same time, the Deputy General was brought back tightly bound, along with his correspondence with Consort One. After reading the letters, the Emperor was furious, not only because the Deputy General had framed a loyal subject, but more importantly, because Consort One had dared to cuckold him with such audacity. Last night, Consort One had a dream where the Emperor personally brought her out of the cold palace and even crowned her as Empress. Overjoyed, before she could savor the dream a second time, she was abruptly thrown into prison. Back at Changla Palace, the noble consort suddenly bowed to me, and I quickly stepped aside to avoid it. Don't avoid it. I must thank you. You saved the lives of my entire family. The noble consort said solemnly. She took my hand, and the look in her eyes was no longer that of a mistress gazing at a servant, but of a friend regarding an equal. Her eyes slowly reddened, and my nose tingled with emotion. If your highness trusts me, perhaps you would hear one more word from me, I said. Merit that overshadows the master. She shuddered all over before collapsing into the chair. After a long silence, she rose and ordered someone to deliver a letter to the Duke's residence. Truth be told, even without my pointing it out, she was no fool. She had clearly sensed the Emperor's murderous intent toward her maternal family. Now, only by making a timely retreat could she preserve the lives of her entire household. The imperial consort was the beloved treasure of her father and brother, and this incident had left them deeply shaken. Father and son promptly returned the tiger tally and requested retirement respectively. His Majesty feigned reluctance for several rounds of persuasion, but seeing their unwavering resolve, he gladly acquiesced. Soon after, an imperial decree arrived at the Palace of Eternal Joy. The imperial consort was elevated to noble consort, a position second only to the empress. The entire Changla Palace was filled with joy, yet the old nanny suddenly grew melancholy, with the position of empress now vacant. If Her Highness could give birth to a prince, perhaps that throne, a prince. My heart ached sharply as I glanced at the imperial noble consort, for I harbored another secret within me. It was something Consort 1 had inadvertently revealed in my past life. The imperial noble consort had been secretly given medicine to render her infertile, likely destined never to bear a child of her own. Perhaps noticing my gaze, the imperial noble consort let out a derisive laugh, as if she had seen through and grown indifferent to everything. This consort has no desire to become empress, and as long as I'm here, there will never be another empress again. In this life, she no longer clung to the emperor's love, yet remained as haughty and domineering as ever. How splendid! Consort 1 was sentenced to be stripped of her title and exiled to Ninguta. As her loyal servant, my younger sister was naturally exiled along with her. On the day of exile, the noble consort specially permitted me to leave the palace to see them off. But warned that I'd face consequences if I showed any soft-hearted tears. No, this shouldn't be happening. My sister still couldn't accept reality. I should have been living in the Kuan Ning Palace, fawned over by all the palace maids and eunuchs, while you should have been executed for your crimes. How did things turn out like this? My younger sister, looking like a madwoman, tried to break free from the exile convoy to grab at me. Whack! A lash landed on her back. Stay in line. Damn it! My sister howled in pain but still wouldn't give up. Once more, go die, go die. She reached toward me through the air, viciously clutching at nothing as if it were my neck. Compared to her madness, Consort 1 was much calmer. Yuju, have you come to see me off? I didn't waste my past favor on you, she said with a slight frown. My feet hurt terribly. Could you give me your shoes to wear? Also, since you're here to see me off, why didn't you bring an extra bundle with clothes and food? I remember your cooking was quite good. Never mind, you've always been too dull to think of such things. I won't hold it against you. Hand over all the silver you have on you. I didn't move, and she urged me again. The silver is too heavy. This servant didn't bring any. But there are 2 500-tael banknotes in this brocade pouch. Does her ladyship want them? Concubine 1 was delighted. Immediately taking the brocade pouch and tucking it into her bosom, he still wanted my shoes, but I ignored him this time. Watching the exile procession fade into the distance, I turned and headed back to the palace. At the entrance of Changle Hall, I encountered an acquaintance once more. Concubine Huan knelt there begging to see the noble consort, claiming she had been falsely accused and could not defend herself. Only the noble consort could protect her. Concubine Bai's child truly wasn't harmed by me, I swear it on my life. Please, noble consort, save me. No one paid her any attention. When she saw me, a glimmer of hope flashed in her eyes. Miss Yuju, I know you're kind-hearted. Please help me. Won't you take me in to see the imperial noble consort? Though foolish, she knew the imperial noble consort was fiercely protective of her own. If she could secure that same shelter as before, she was certain to escape danger once more. I pulled my sleeve free from her grasp, bowed slightly, and stepped around her through the gate. There was nothing left to say between us. Finally, Consort Huan was sentenced to death by beating for plotting against noble Consort Bai, causing her to die from postpartum hemorrhage after giving birth. The child born to noble Consort Bai was brought by His Majesty to the Palace of Eternal Joy. From then on, the Palace of Eternal Joy gained a new little master. As for me, I was gradually promoted step by step to become a senior palace maid again. I have an ordinary appearance, so the imperial noble consort rarely keeps me by her side, and His Majesty also prefers to look at beauties. I specialize in managing the storeroom, and in my free time, I stay in the kitchen with the old maids, experimenting with new dishes. The little master, however, enjoys being held by me. A year passed by in the blink of an eye. One day, a letter actually arrived for me from outside the palace. Though called a letter, it was really just a filthy, tattered strip of cloth. One could tell the writer's urgent state of mind. The letter's contents asked about that 1,000-tael banknote. Why were there only 2 pieces of yellow paper in the brocade pouch? I burst out laughing, and the little eunuch delivering the letter scratched his head. I dare not hide it from Miss Yuju. This letter came from the north. It was sent half a year ago, and now we don't even know if the sender is alive or dead. Is that so? I murmured. Alive. The world is unpredictable. Dead. the banknotes can finally be received. The matter of the letter came to the attention of the imperial noble consort, who summoned me to inquire about it, and I recounted the whole story to her. She was beside herself with laughter, tears streaming from her eyes. Reward. Give her a reward. This is the funniest thing I've heard in all these years, she declared. Several more years passed, and I reached the age to leave the palace. The imperial noble consort summoned me to her presence. After long contemplation, I confessed that I had no desire to leave the palace. Having long lost both parents and kin, what would leaving the palace avail me? The world beyond these walls holds little kindness for women. To speak truthfully, I cannot bear parting from matron. Nor from Her Highness the imperial noble consort. Then stay if you wish, she said. It's not as though we cannot afford to keep you. The imperial noble consort pretended not to care, but I still caught the flicker of joy in her eyes. You've already reached the top as a palace maid. As for going higher, well, you're not pretty enough to become a concubine. These days, Her Highness the imperial noble consort had begun worrying about my future. Your Highness, have you forgotten? The palace still has female officials. Yuju here is no less capable than any of them, the matron reminded her with a smile. The imperial noble consort raised an eyebrow and went to seek the emperor's favor that very day. She had me transferred to the imperial kitchen. I became the supervising matron of culinary affairs, holding a 6th-rank position. A few days later, the imperial noble consort frowned again. The matron asked, "What troubles you?" These women in the palace love to scheme over meals the most. Yuju might easily get implicated. Can I protect her every single time? What if I die one day? Your Highness, forget it. I think the Shosho Palace would be better. Her temperament suits being a teaching matron. It's settled then. So the next day, I went to the Shosho Palace again. Being a teaching instructor is actually half a rank higher than working in the imperial kitchen. Everyone respectfully addresses me as Auntie Yuju. I've adapted quite well here, teaching etiquette and rules to newly selected palace maids. This is truly a comfortable retirement position. The end.